Welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success story series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what really drives them forward. And today I'm delighted to have with us Glen McGowan, who's the partner at Mass Architecture. So Glen, firstly, thank you for your time this morning. And if you'd like to introduce yourself for Mass Architecture and how you help your clients, that would be great.
Okay, so my name is Glen McGowan. I'm a partner in Mass Architecture. We're a chartered architectural practice based in York. We specialise in historic buildings and in working for clients who have challenging planning problems, who have a site that they may have struggled to get consents on, and we help them achieve their ambitions.
Brilliant. So it must be quite an interesting place, especially in York, Glen, with so many historic buildings and so many historic sites.
Well, York is the primary reason. I trained as an architect, and then we started our business in London, and moving to York, we quickly realised we needed to upskill because of the number of historic buildings. I mean, within the historic core of York, you essentially can't dig a hole without hitting archaeology, and so an understanding of the implications of that has become key to driving our business forward. So I think after moving to York, after a couple of years, I actually upskilled and trained as a conservation architect to add to the chartered architect practice. And yeah, that's really driven our business. Having that speciality has really driven our business forward. We work on historic buildings across the whole of Yorkshire now, really.
Wonderful. So could you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into business and why this particular one?
I was a carpenter, and then I retrained as an architect following the completion of my apprenticeship. I initially worked for a big London practice. Like many people, I think, who work for big architectural practices, I commanded a pretty good salary, and I worked on some prestigious buildings. But my work wasn't particularly engaging. My days weren't particularly varied. I didn't have much control over the type of work I did or the variety of work I did. There wasn't much ownership there. So in concert with my partner, who was in a similar situation, we decided to drop all of those things, that comfortable lifestyle, those nice holidays and regular working hours, and go off and found our own architectural practice, Mass Architecture. And we called it Mass to reflect the fact that the process of designing and building a building isn't really down to one individual. It's a collective effort. You know, the skills that are required don't start and stop with the architect. They include all the other consultants and the guys on site who build it. You know, the sort of skilled tradesmen like carpenters, joiners, electricians. Their knowledge and experience is invaluable. So we didn't want to sort of be a practice where, you know, one main individual is constantly quoted as the person who's designed and executed this building. So that's why we called ourselves Mass.
Brilliant. No, that makes lots of sense. And when you were growing up, was this always what you wanted to do?
That seems a long time ago now. That's a question I've not been asked in quite a while. I'm not really sure what I wanted to do when I grew up. I mean, a lot of the kids where I grew up in the area where I grew up ended up joining the army. So I probably at some point wanted to join the army as well. But I don't think I was ever quite disciplined enough to make the grade. So I took a trade apprenticeship instead.
Brilliant. And what you know, just looking back over the last few years, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome?
Oh, the last 2 years. I mean, strangely, you know, the pandemic, when it first struck, I sat down with the other partner and we essentially worked out a strategy just to survive. You know, times were so pessimistic then that we realised that everything we might have built up over the preceding years could be lost. And it was a case of, well, how do we actually come out of this, just the two of us, perhaps even working as a business? But what quickly happened is people regained their confidence or got used to the situation. I think we're a fairly robust species, aren't we, humans? And quickly we found ways of getting on with life again. And we've actually been incredibly busy over the last 2 to 3 years, and we don't see that sort of tailing off. We've actually gone through unprecedented growth. The biggest challenges for us for a business over the last couple of years has actually been to find staff. That's a real challenge for us. Here in York, if we're trying to recruit, we actually have to compete with London, Manchester, Leeds, and as far as Glasgow, so attracting architects, even attracting graduates, is quite a challenge. I mean, York is a very nice place to live, I think. It doesn't perhaps carry the glamour of London, shall we say, for a young graduate. So I think that's a primary challenge for us. It's finding the right people to work with us, and making sure that we can retain them and keep them engaged with our business and feeling part of our business.
I'm just interested, do you lead with the fact that you are, you do a lot of conservation, architectural work?
We do, yes. I mean, we sell ourselves as a very high-end design practice, basically. We are very keen to sort of attract particular types of clients and work on particular types of projects. So, we put that forward as a strong selling point, and also a strong point that we put across to potential employees is how we can help them develop their career. They're not just coming for a job. There's an opportunity to develop, there's an opportunity to take ownership. So going back to the things I was saying about earlier, when I was employed by a practice, rather than just being used as a cog in the wheel, was actually having a concern for how they develop and how they can grow. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. Recruiting and retaining great people is a common challenge we see. I see a moment across most sectors, to be perfectly honest, and be interested to see where it goes. I feel there's an element of people not wanting to move yet until they're totally sure what the other side of lockdown looks like. But I feel that the market, like most markets, eventually will start to move more, and so hopefully we'll see. So hopefully by the end of this year we'll see a more standard movement of people. I think, which obviously it's that movement that we need of recruits to come. Obviously, hopefully we keep some, but that naturally people move.
It's an interesting time as well, because I think obviously during the pandemic it made lots of people reassess their sort of situation and what they're doing. So it's sort of unprecedented, I think. But I'd agree with you. I think it will settle back down into a more predictable rhythm or pattern.
I completely agree. It's funny until you talked right at the start about how so many historical features that you come in York, and I mean obviously in York quite a lot. But and it just really in my mind likened it to I remember the first time I went to Rome, and I know it's a different era, but it's like there's bits of marble lying around, and it's just like almost like just lying there. Well, that was in use 2,000 years ago or something, and it's just amazing how much perhaps even in York we would maybe take for granted how many amazing buildings there are. I know I've been in quite a few, and it's just it really is an amazing city.
It's a very beautiful place to live, and I feel quite fortunate because the decision to move here wasn't entirely mine, shall we say, and I probably didn't know as much about the city as I know now. Moving from London to York, I mean, I think moving out of London when you're in your sort of late 20s, early 30s, is quite a wrench. It's quite a big decision, but it's not one that I've lived to regret at all.
I could totally understand why it's such a beautiful place. So just looking at sort of the things that you might have learned in business and potentially life, but especially from those experiences, what would you say the biggest things you've learned would be?
I think that's an interesting question. There are so many things. We could probably sit here and talk all day. I mean, one of the kind of interesting things about being an architect is you spend an extraordinary amount of time. I think I spent 9 years training to be a conservation architect in total, and at no point, despite the fact that the aspiration that you're given is that you own your own practice, you own your own business. At no point are you given any business training whatsoever. So it's a fairly steep learning curve when you start your own practice, and you have to very quickly align what you've been taught as an architect to what you need to do as a business owner.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key things I've learned it's almost to be prepared not to take work that doesn't suit your business. I think that's a really interesting thing interesting. It's a difficult challenge when you work for yourself to turn down work.
Yep.
It's not the right type of work if it's not where your direction of travel is. I don't think it really is a good thing to do. I also think you need to be very careful. I mean, at the moment, we are looking for more staff, and we're very kind of cautious about the amount of work that we take on. I think you need to always have an eye on the long term. You obviously need jobs coming in all the time. You know, you can't stop looking for work, but at the same time, you need to be very kind of careful about making sure you don't over-resource yourself. That's a challenge we're finding at the moment. Not being able to deliver.
Yeah.
I think the other problem that you always find, and I've found this from talking to other business owners, is you start to grow your business, you invariably have to relinquish control. You have to give people ownership, and you simply don't have enough hours in the day to do all the work that you want to do. So you have to delegate. And as you delegate, you need to have a very robust set of procedures for ensuring that the quality is maintained.
Yeah.
Working to the standards that you need them to be, so that the product that you're giving your clients doesn't drop as your business grows.
Yeah. Yeah, very wise words. Your first point, it's offered with, you know, I work with lots of growing businesses, and you know, the reality is, in general, is most businesses are started by people that are good at what they do. They're not necessarily good or trained at running a business at what they do. And as you say, 9 years to be a conservation architect, and I often ask people how many years have you trained to be a business owner, and it's very low. But yeah, it's a great learning to have. But yeah, absolutely, the delegation point is so key. Growth only happens with effective delegation. We can't, we hit that limit otherwise. But effective delegation isn't always easy to achieve. So it's great that you've got the tools and you've learned the lessons on that.
Yeah, and I think that's something also that comes from talking to the guys that you work with and getting their feedback and their input. I think as a business owner, you can always be slightly over-optimistic about how long things take or how straightforward they are. So, and again, that goes to what I was talking about giving people ownership and involving them in the business and giving them a sense of having real importance, which, it's key, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that all makes sense. So you're probably aware we're a business coaching organisation. Well, who would you say is the best coach you've ever had, and what made them so?
Well, that's a difficult question. I think actually probably the first business coach that we had, we actually made a decision after being in business for several years and ignoring people who'd owned businesses and thinking that we knew it all. We decided to actually get a business coach. And he came and asked us a series of questions, which I think were relatively straightforward questions about our KPI, where we just looked back with complete amusement at him. And I remember walking out of that meeting thinking, well, I really should know these things about our business. These are basic things. And it goes back to what you said about, we're sort of good at our passion, but had no business training. And so that decision to engage someone who could help us with the business side of things was really, really important, I think. I think we wouldn't have grown without that.
Yeah, brilliant.
We wouldn't have been shaped into what we are now, which is business owners. We'd still be fairly naive, I think.
No, really great. It's great to hear. And it starts with an open mind, and that's what's great to hear. It starts with the open mind that says, maybe we don't know everything that we need to know, and maybe there's things that we could learn from others. And coaching for me is not just about providing information. It's about helping us find our own truth, and our own way forward.
And I think that was the thing. We had to be in business for a certain amount of time before we that it really dawned on us that we needed help, that we were not really working to our potential or earning to our potential because of the practices that we implemented, and we needed someone who had that experience to really help us drive the business in a different direction.
It's a really good point. I often say to some of my colleagues that I rarely work with startup businesses at that first point, because we've got all those dreams, we know what we're going to do, we've got absolute clarity, and I always say it's better to wait a couple of years till we've had the crap kicked out of us a little bit to maybe realize that it's not one of those things. But it's great. I mean, we need that passion. We wouldn't start a business if we didn't have that passion and that certainty and all those things that we need. So it's those stages of growth that we need. We need that absolute certainty at the start. We'll occasionally work with businesses right from the start, but they're typically people that have already been engaged with some form of coaching or some form of beforehand. And it's funny. And I say, I'm talking about open, having an open mind. There was a quote I picked up a while ago and I love, which is, I think it's the mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. And I think that's actually, speaking of which, I love to pick up any quotes or sayings that people have. Is there anything that you fall back on, anything that you find yourself saying to keep things going, or at a particular point?
I don't know, really. I think the thing I always bear in mind is that success isn't a straight line. It's not a straight line from A to B. There are bound to be setbacks. There are bound to be times when you fail. Success is about keeping a clear goal that you're trying to reach B and learning from your mistakes. And I think that if you start your own business, you will make mistakes. And I don't think you should necessarily beat yourself up about that. It's just that's the territory that you're in. You learn from it, you move on, and you keep going, and you keep going, you learn and get better. You will reach your final objective, I think.
Brilliant. Again, a great view to have it. The founder of my organisation, which is now global, a guy called Brad Sugars, he told me quite a long time ago now that he's very successful, and he said I'm as successful as I am because I've made more mistakes than anybody else I know, not in spite of them, but it's that having a level of comfort with trying things to know some of them might fail.
I think you've got to do that. I mean, it's as I often say to people in my office, it's not realistic to expect to have a career of 40 to 45 years and not make a mistake. We're all human. That happens. We're fallible. So
there used to be, I heard this story, and it may be one of these urban myths, but I think it was one of the large blue chips. I think at the time it was someone like Honeywell or Hewlett Packard or something. So we're going back sort of 20, 30 years. And they used to give every new employee a monopoly get out of jail free card. And they'd literally say, when you make your first big mistake, bring it, give it. There will be no repercussions whatsoever, as long as you can tell us what you've learned. And I just thought, what a great way of getting people comfortable with just stretching the envelope, because without that, without stretching, we don't get growth, and therefore, it's having that comfort. It's scary, because when we start, especially in that sort of establishment and survival phase of a business, it's quite fearful, isn't it, Glenn? It's like, every mistake could be the last. Are we spending our money in the right place? But without that level of comfort to try things, we typically stay where we are.
Exactly. Yeah, I think so. You've got to take a few risks to try and grow, and as you take those risks, they're not all going to pay off.
Absolutely. So, what would you say you've learned about yourself along this journey?
I think I've learned that my stress threshold is a lot higher than it was when I first started. I think that I had to work on certain aspects of my skill set. Managing other people is not something that necessarily came particularly naturally to me.
Yep.
So, working out those things, those key things that you need to be able to grow your business is something that I've had to really work on. I think we all have things that we are particularly good at. We also have things that we particularly like to do. So filling out my timesheet is still a big chore for me. You learn that those things, you can't expect other people to do those things if you don't do them yourself.
No. Agreed, and a fundamental measure, if we're a service business, that our stock is our time, isn't it? So knowing where it's gone is just absolutely fundamental. Great. So obviously it was great to hear that, obviously from Foundation, going through what you've done, you're not, you survived the lockdown and COVID, and things are looking great. What does the future look like? What are your plans, and what do you see as your main challenges as you move forward?
Our sort of future workload is extremely good. It's exciting. Right. The opportunities that people are coming to us now. I think we've been in York and doing what we do for a sufficient amount of time that we've built up a reputation. So people are starting to know who we are and come to us. That's taken quite a while. That wasn't an overnight thing. We're talking 10 years to build that up, where we're becoming the go-to people. So there's lots of opportunities, lots of businesses that we've wanted to work with, or clients that we've wanted to work with, who are now coming to us, and then people who are being recommended to us by a wider network of people. I think the key challenges are always pretty much the same. It's making sure that we handle that workload so we are able to deliver on what we promise.
Yeah.
And making sure that when we recruit the right people for our business. But I think the absolute key thing is keeping the team that we've got now happy, retaining them, and retaining staff. I think is a real challenge for a small business. When you're sort of starting out and there's only 3 or 4 of you, people don't really see how their career can develop. Obviously, as you grow as a business, that becomes easy to help people to develop. But I do think that the retaining staff is probably the key challenge for us, really.
I think that it is a challenge for many people, and what I found is it's created that brightness of future. It's that vision. Where are we going? Because although people say they come and go for things like salary, it's really about the career. It's about where they're going, and we need to be really clear what the future looks like, so people can decide if they want to be part of that. I think a very, very small number of people move work or move jobs because of money. I mean, as I said earlier, we compete with London practices, and we simply can't compete on the salary that they offer. But the whole package that we offer, the ownership, the engagement, people enjoying their work, that's a big part of why people come to work for us and what we offer them. Wonderful. It's great to hear. Really, really great to hear. So just a few sort of simple questions to wrap up. I'm interested to know what you'd say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now.
Well, I would say have a very clear vision of what it is that you are going to offer.
Yep.
Typically for an architect, when they start, they take every and all projects. And every potential client, we can do this, we can do that. Find something that interests you, or something that you're very good at, and stick to that as much as you can, and that becomes your unique selling point. And that really helps when you're going out and meeting people and talking to people.
Yeah.
Giving them an understanding, something that they can hook onto about what you offer that's different and why they would want to work with you. I think that's a really key thing, to understand what it is you're good at, what it is you can offer, and finding some sort of tagline that you can tell people when you meet them that's going to stick in their brain.
Brilliant.
You want to be their go-to guy.
Brilliant. Yeah, love it. And if you started your business again, is there anything that you do differently?
I might have a few clients before I actually decided to leave my former job. A little bit of money to pay the mortgage. I think we would. I would be much more open to advice that people gave me. People like my accountant gave me advice in the first year, and I thought, well, what does he know about my business? He's not an architect. And actually, there are some universal truths to running a business. And I was very, very reluctant to hear those until we were a good couple of years in. And I think if I was starting again, I'd be much more open to advice. I think I would be much more open to seeking advice from people who run their own businesses, so I could understand what would really, really help me get to where I wanted to go to quicker.
Brilliant.
It's pain.
It's yeah, we don't need, it's learning by experience has a level of importance, but when the experiences are quite painful, it's quite useful to learn from other people's experiences. It's not the only way to learn, and it's certainly not the most leveraged way. But some things we have to go through to really believe, I think.
Well, I think there's a sort of proverb in architecture that you're never going to design something that no one's designed before. So
Right.
don't invent the wheel, just learn from your predecessors. And I think that probably goes true for business as well. There's no mistake that you're making that someone else hasn't made that you could learn from them.
Absolutely. I think so much of a business is similar. It's obviously what we have to do is to show the uniqueness of how we do what we do and what we do. But as you said, there's so many aspects of a business that are relatively standard. It's sensible we put our own mark on them when we do them our way, but as you said, there's probably somebody has done something similar somewhere in the world, and it's worth learning from. Wonderful. So just one final question. What is the best advice you would give to an 18-year-old you, if you could?
Don't go out and revise more. I would probably say, I think when I was 18, I thought hard work in itself was enough to advance my career and my life, etc., etc. What I would say is that hard work has to be coupled with an idea of where you want that work to take you. You really need to understand how you want your career to develop, which is quite a challenging thing for an 18-year-old to know. But I think, just turning up to work and working really hard and not having any idea of where that work's going to take you is not really going to get you where you want to go. I think the other thing I would say is value your time and value yourself. Understand that the skills that you can offer do have some value, and you should be properly rewarded for those.
No, but very wise words. There's on the first point, I think there's a Japanese proverb that I picked up quite a long time ago, which I love, which is, I haven't said it for a while, so it's good reminder. So it is, vision without action is but a daydream, but action without vision is a nightmare. if that makes sense. So
it does make sense.
I kept holding that one because it's bang on. I mean, we can work so hard, and I see so many people working so hard, but not spending the time to take a step back and look up and say, "Am I going in the right direction?"
I mean, that's an interesting point. It's something I think that happens to a lot of businesses when they, well, I was going to say when they first start up, but I've seen it in many businesses working with contractors and so forth. That the guy who should be taking a step back and taking an overview of the business is actually busy working away on the production. I've seen many sort of building contractor owners who are rather than working on building their business up or chopping wood on site, and that's not best use of their skills.
No.
So I certainly think that it's very easy, particularly when you're busy, to get lost in the business and not take that over you.
I think the analogy of I've used with quite a few people recently is the analogy of a ship, especially a sailing ship, is the crew don't really want you pulling the sails up with them. They want you steering the boat. And it's going a bit faster, but going towards rocks or something isn't a sensible thing to do. So we all have our place, isn't it? That's the key thing. Is our job is to guide and steer and plan the future. It may be to do a bit of the do when absolutely necessary, but most of the time our job is different to other members of a team, as in any team. Wonderful. Well, Glen, it's been absolutely fascinating, actually, and really enlightening in many areas. So thank you so much for spending your time this morning. And it'd be great to maybe come back in 6 to 12 months and just see the developments and maybe talk a bit more about the the world of recruitment and retaining and recruiting great people.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful. It's been great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.